Vandeyam Shigarashi Yatha Parakamalam Shigaran Vaishnavam Sya Shirupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shivishkam Vitam Sya Om Jnana Timarandasya Gyanajana Shalakaya Chakshuram Milidam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Gurva Bishtam Supurakam Gurganara Sesha Sambhushitam Chintya Samasta Veda Nipanam Shri Rupa Patanugam Govindamidam Ujwalam Bharatanum Bhaktyan Vidam Sundaram Mande Vishwagurun Shah Divyat Bhagavat Premna Vibijapranam Devam Divyatanam Suchanda Varanam Balarka Chelan Shitam Sandrananda Puram Sadeka Varanam Vairagya Vidyamburim Sri Siddhanta Nidhim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Baram Mandetam Shubharam Mareka Sharanam Nyashishvara Shidaram Vanshakopatarubyascha Kripasindubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahavaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gaurachavishe Namah. So we're reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita by Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami with translation and commentary by Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. This is Adi-lila, chapter 5, the glories of Lord Nityananda Balaram, and this is verse number 22. Chintamani prakara sadmasu kalpa vriksha lakshavriteshu surabir abhipalayantam lakshmi sahasra shatasam brahma sevyamanam govindamari parusham tamaham bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor, who is tending cows yielding all desires in abodes built with spiritual gems and surrounded by millions of purpose trees. He is always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds and thousands of goddesses of fortune. This is a verse from the Brahma-Samhita. This description of the abode of Krishna gives us definite information of the transcendental place where not only is life eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge, but there are ample vegetables, milk, jewels, and beautiful homes and gardens tended by lovely damsels who are all goddesses of fortune. Krishna Loka is the topmost planet in the spiritual sky, and below it are innumerable spheres, a description of which can be found in Srimad Bhagavatam. In the beginning of Lord Brahma's self-realization, he was shown a transcendental vision of the Vaikuntha spheres by the grace of Narayan. Later, by the grace of Krishna, he was shown a transcendental vision of Krishna Loka. This transcendental vision is like the reception of television from the moon via a mechanical system for receiving modulated waves, but it is achieved by penance. And meditation within oneself. Srimad Bhagavatam states that in Vaikuntha Loka, the material modes of nature represented by the qualities of goodness, passion, and ignorance have no influence. In the material world, the highest qualitative manifestation is goodness, which is characterized by truthfulness, mental equilibrium, cleanliness, control of the senses, simplicity, essential knowledge, faith in God, scientific knowledge, and so on. Nevertheless, all these qualities are mixed with passion and imperfection. But the qualities in Vaikuntha are manifestation of God's internal potency, and therefore they are purely spiritual and transcendental with no trace of material infection. No material planet, even Satyaloka, is comparable in quality to the spiritual planets, where the 5 inherent qualities of the material world, namely ignorance, misery, egoism, anger and envy are completely absent. In the material world, everything is a creation. Anything we can think of within our experience, including even our own bodies and minds, was created. This process of creation began with the life of Brahma, and the creative principle is prevalent all over the material universe because of the quality of passion. But since the quality of passion is conspicuous by its absence in the Vaikuntha planets, nothing there is created, everything there is eternally existent. And because there is no mode of ignorance, there is also no question of annihilation or destruction. In the material world, one may try to make everything permanent by developing the above-mentioned qualities of goodness, but because the goodness in the material world is mixed with passion and ignorance, nothing here can exist permanently, despite all the good plans of the best scientific brains. Therefore, in the material world, we have no experience of eternity, bliss, and fullness of knowledge. But in the spiritual world, because of the complete absence of the qualitative modes, everything is eternal, blissful, and cognizant. Everything can speak, everything can move, everything can hear, and everything can see in fully blessed existence for eternity. The situation being so, naturally space and time the situation being so, naturally space and time in the forms of past, present, and future have no influence there. In the spiritual sky, there is no change because time has no influence. Consequently, the influence of Maya, the total external energy, which induces us to become more and more materialistic and forget our relationship with God, is also absent there. As spiritual sparks of the beams emanating from the transcendental body of the Lord, we are all permanently related with Him and equal to Him in quality. The material energy is a covering of the spiritual spark, but in the absence of that material covering, the living beings in Vaikuntha Loka are never forgetful of their identities. They are eternally cognizant of their relationship with God in their constitutional position of rendering transcendental loving service to the Lord. Because they constantly engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord, it is natural to conclude that their senses are also transcendental, for one cannot serve the Lord with material senses. The inhabitants of Vaikuntha Loka do not possess material senses with which to lord it over material nature. Persons with a poor fund of knowledge conclude that a place void of material qualities must be some sort of formless nothingness. In reality, however, there are qualities in the spiritual world, but they are different from the material qualities because everything there is eternal, unlimited, and pure. The atmosphere there is self-illuminating, and thus there is no need of a sun, a moon, fire, electricity, and so on. One who can reach that abode does not come back to the material world with a material body. There is no difference between atheists and the faithful in the Vaikuntha planets because all who settle there are freed from the material qualities, and thus suras and asuras become equally obedient, loving servitors of the Lord. The residents of Vaikuntha have brilliantly black complexions, much more fascinating and attractive than the dull white and black complexions found in the material world. Their bodies, being spiritual, have no equals in the material world. The beauty of a bright cloud with lightning flashes on it merely hints at their beauty. Generally, the inhabitants of Vaikuntha dress in yellow clothing. Their bodies are delicate and attractively built, and their eyes are like the petals of a lotus flower, like lotus flowers. Like Lord Vishnu, the residents of Vaikuntha have 4 hands decorated with a conch shell, wheel, club, and lotus flower. Their chests are beautifully broad and fully decorated with necklaces of a brilliant diamond-like metal surrounded by costly jewels never to be found in the material world. The residents of Vaikuntha are always peaceful, The residents of Vaikuntha are always powerful and effulgent. Some of them have complexions like red coral cat's eyes and lotus flowers, and each of them has earrings of costly jewels. On their heads they wear flowery crowns resembling garlands. In the Vaikunthas there are airplanes, but they make no tumultuous sounds. Material airplanes are not at all safe. They can fall down and crash at any time, for matter is imperfect in every respect. In the spiritual sky, however, the airplanes are also spiritual, and they are spiritually brilliant and bright. These airplanes do not fly business executives, politicians, or planning commissions as passengers, nor do they carry cargo or postal bags, for they are all unknown. For these are all unknown there. These planets are for pleasure trips only, and these planes are for pleasure trips only, and the residents of Vaikuntha fly in them with their heavenly, beautiful, fairy-like consorts. Therefore, these airplanes full of residents of Vaikuntha, both male and female, increase the beauty of the spiritual sky. We cannot imagine how beautiful they are, but their beauty may be compared to the clouds in the sky accompanied by silver branches of electric lightning. The spiritual sky of Vaikuntha Loka is always decorated in this way. The full opulence of the internal potency of Godhead is always resplendent in Vaikuntha Loka, where goddesses of fortune are ever increasingly attached to serving the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead. These goddesses of fortune, accompanied by their friends, always create a festive atmosphere of transcendental mirth. Always singing the glories of the Lord, they are not silent even for a moment. There are unlimited Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual sky, and the ratio of these planets to the material planets in the material sky is 3-to-1. Thus the poor materialist is busy making political adjustments on a planet that is most insignificant in God's creation, to say nothing of the planet Earth. The whole universe with innumerable planets throughout the galaxies is comparable to a single mustard seed in a bag full of mustard seeds. But the poor materialist makes plans to live comfortably here and thus waste his valuable human energy in something that is doomed to frustration. Instead of wasting his time with business speculations, he should seek the life of plain living and high spiritual thinking, and thus save himself from perpetual materialistic unrest. Even if a materialist wants to develop material facilities, he can transfer himself to planets where he can experience material pleasures much more advanced than those available on Earth. The best plan is to prepare oneself to return to the spiritual sky after leaving the body. However, if one is intent on enjoying material facilities, one can transfer himself to other planets in the material sky by utilizing yogic powers. The playful spaceships of the astronauts are but childish entertainments and are of no use for this purpose. The Ashtanga Yoga system is a materialistic art of controlling air by transferring it from the stomach to the navel, from the navel to the heart, from the heart to the collarbone, from there to the eyeballs, from there to the cerebellum, and from there to any desired planet. The velocities of air and light are taken into consideration by the material scientist, but he has no information of the velocity of the mind and intelligence. We have some limited experience of the velocity of the mind because in a moment we can transfer our minds to places hundreds of thousands of miles away. Intelligence is even finer. Finer than intelligence is the soul, which is not matter like mind and intelligence, but is spirit or antimatter. The soul is hundreds of thousands of times finer and more powerful than intelligence. We can thus only imagine the velocity of the soul in its traveling from one planet to another. Needless to say, the soul travels by its own strength and not with the help of any kind of material vehicle. The bestial civilization of eating, sleeping, fearing, and sense gratifying has misled modern man into forgetting how powerful a soul he has. As we have already described, the soul as a spiritual spark many, many times more illuminating, dazzling, and powerful than the sun, moon, or electricity. Human life is spoiled when man does not realize his real identity with his soul. Lord Chaitanya appeared with Lord Nityananda to save man from this type of misleading civilization. Srimad Bhagavatam also describes how yogis can travel to all the planets in the universe. When the vital force is lifted to the cerebellum, there is every chance that this force will burst out from the eyes, nose, ears, etc., as these are places that are known as the seventh orbit of the vital force. But the yogis can block these holes by complete suspension of air. The yogi then concentrates the vital force in the middle position, that is between the eyebrows. At this position, the yogi can think of the planet to which he wants to go after leaving the body. He can then decide whether he wants to go to the abode of Krishna in the transcendental Vaikunthas, from which he will not be required to descend into the material world, or to travel to higher planets in the material universe. The perfect yogi is at liberty to do either. For this perfect yogi who has attained success in the method of leaving his body in perfect consciousness, transferring from one planet to another is as easy as an ordinary man's walking to the grocery store. As already discussed, the material body is just a covering of the spiritual soul. Mind and intelligence are the undercoverings, and the gross body of earth, water, air, and so on is the overcoating of the soul. As such, any advanced soul who has realized himself by the yogic process, who knows the relationship between matter and spirit, can leave the gross dress of the soul in perfect order and as he desires. By the grace of God, we have complete freedom. Because the Lord is kind to us, we can live anywhere, either in the spiritual sky or in the material sky, upon whichever planet we desire. However, misuse of this freedom causes one to fall down into the material world and suffer the threefold miseries of conditioned life. The living of a miserable life in the material world by dint of the soul's choice is nicely illustrated by Milton in Paradise Lost. Similarly, by choice, the soul can regain paradise and return home back to Godhead. At the critical time of death, one can place the vital force between the two eyebrows and decide where he wants to go. If he is reluctant to maintain any connection with the material world, he can, in less than a second, reach the transcendental abode of Vaikuntha and appear there completely in his spiritual body, which will be suitable for him in the spiritual atmosphere. He has simply the desire to leave the material world both in finer and grosser forms, and then move the vital force to the topmost part of the skull and leave the body from the hole in the skull called the Brahma-Randra. This is easy for one perfect in the practice of yoga. Of course, man is endowed with free will, and as such, if he does not want to free himself from the material world, he may enjoy the life of Brahmapada, occupation of the post of Brahma, and visit Siddhaloka, the planets of materially perfect beings who have full capacities to control gravity, space, and time. To visit these higher planets in the material universe, one need not give up his mind and intelligence, finer matter, but need only give up grosser matter, the material body. Each and every planet has its particular atmosphere, and if one wants to travel to any particular planet within the material universe, one has to adapt his material body to the climatic condition of that planet. For instance, if one wants to go from India to Europe, where the climatic condition is different, one has to change his dress accordingly. Similarly, a complete change of body is necessary if one wants to go to the transcendental planets of Vaikuntha. However, if one wants to go to the higher material planets, he can keep his finer dress of mind, intelligence, and ego, but has to leave his gross dress body made of earth, water, fire, etc. When one goes to a transcendental planet, it is necessary to change both the finer and gross bodies, for one has to reach the spiritual sky completely in a spiritual form. This change of dress will take place automatically at the time of death if one so desires. The Bhagavad Gita confirms that one will attain his next material body according to his desires at the time he leaves his body. The desire of the mind carries the soul to a suitable atmosphere, as the wind carries aromas from one place to another. Unfortunately, those who are not yogis but gross materialists, who throughout their lives indulge in sense gratification, are puzzled by the disarrangement of the bodily and mental conditions at the time of death. Such gross sensualists, encumbered by the main ideas, desires, and associations of the lives that they have such gross sensualists, encumbered by the main ideas, desires, and associations of the lives they have led, desire something against their interest and thus foolishly take on new bodies that perpetuate their material miseries. Systematic training of the mind and intelligence is therefore needed so that at the time of death one may consciously desire a suitable body either on this planet or another material planet or even a transcendental planet. A civilization that does not consider the progressive advancement of the immortal soul merely fosters a bestial life of ignorance. It is foolish to think that every soul that passes away goes to the same place. Either the soul goes to a place he desires at the time of death, or upon leaving his body he is forced to accept a position according to his acts in his previous life. The difference between the materialist and the yogi is that a materialist cannot determine his next body, whereas a yogi can consciously attain a suitable body for enjoyment in the higher planets. Throughout his life, the gross materialist, who is constantly after sense gratification, spends all day earning his livelihood to maintain his family, and at night he wastes his energy in sex enjoyment, or else goes to sleep thinking about all he has done in the daytime. That is the monotonous life of the materialist, although differently graded as businessmen, lawyers, politicians, professors, judges, coolies, pickpockets, laborers, and so on. Materialists all simply engage in eating, sleeping, fearing, and sense gratification, and thus spoil their valuable lives pursuing luxury and neglecting to perfect their lives through spiritual realization. Yogis, however, try to perfect their lives, and therefore the Bhagavad Gita enjoins that everyone should become a yogi. Yoga is a system for linking the soul in the service of the Lord. Only under superior guidance can one practice such yoga in his life without changing his social position. As already described, the yogi can go anywhere he desires without mechanical help, for a yogi can place his mind and intelligence within the air circulating inside his body, and by practicing the art of breath control, he can mix that air with the air that blows all over the universe outside his body. With the help of this universal air, a yogi can travel to any planet and get a body suitable for its atmosphere. We can understand this process by comparing it to the electronic transmission of radio messages. With the radio transmitters, sound waves produced at a certain station can travel all over the earth in seconds. But sound is produced from the ethereal sky and is already explained. Subtler than the ethereal sky is the mind, and finer than the mind is the intelligence. Spirit is still finer than the intelligence, and by nature it is completely different from matter. Thus we can just imagine how quickly the spirit soul can travel through the universal atmosphere. To come to this stage of manipulating finer elements like mind, intelligence, and spirit, one needs appropriate training, an appropriate mode of life, and appropriate association. Such training depends upon sincere prayers, devotional service, achievement of success and mystic perfection, and the successful merging of oneself in the activities of the soul and supersoul. A gross materialist, whether he has an empiric philosopher, a gross materialist, whether he be an empiric philosopher, a scientist, a psychologist, or whatever, cannot attain such success through blunt efforts and word jugglery. Materialists who perform yajnas or great sacrifices are comparatively better than grosser materialists who do not know anything beyond laboratories and test tubes. The advanced materialists who perform such sacrifices can reach the planets called Vaishvanara, a fiery planet similar to the sun. On this planet, which is situated on the way to Brahmaloka, the topmost planet in the universe, such an advanced materialist can free himself from all traces of vice and its effects. When such a materialist is purified, he can rise to the orbit of the pole star, Dhruvaloka. Within this orbit, which is called the Shishumara Chakra, are situated the Aditya Lokas and the Vaikuntha planets within this universe. A purified materialist who has performed many sacrifices, undergone severe penances, and given the major portion of his wealth in charity can reach such planets as Dhruvaloka. And if he becomes still more qualified there, he can penetrate still higher orbits and pass through the navel of the universe to reach the planet Maharloka, where sages like Bhrigu Muni live. In Maharloka, one can live even to the time of the partial annihilation of the universe. This annihilation begins when Anantadeva, from the lowest position in the universe, produces a great blazing fire. The heat of this fire reaches even Maharloka, and then the residents of Maharloka travel to Brahmaloka, which exists for twice the duration of a Pararda time. In Brahmaloka, there is an unlimited number of airplanes that are controlled not by yantra, machine, but by mantra, psychic action. Because of the existence of the mind and intelligence on Brahmaloka, its residents have feelings of happiness and distress, but there is no cause of lamentation from old age, death, fear, or distress. They feel sympathy, however, for the suffering living beings who are consumed in the fire of annihilation. The residents of Brahmaloka do not have gross material bodies to change at death, but they transform their subtle bodies into spiritual bodies and thus enter the spiritual sky. The residents of Brahmaloka can attain perfection in 3 different ways. Virtuous persons who reach Brahmaloka by dint of their pious work become masters of various planets after the resurrection of Brahma. Those who have worshipped Garbhodakashayi Vishnu are liberated with Brahma, and those who are pure devotees of the personality of Godhead at once push through the coverings of the universe and enter the spiritual sky. The numberless universes exist together in foam-like clusters, and so only some of them are surrounded by the water of the causal ocean. When agitated by the glance of Karanabdhishayi Vishnu, material nature produces the total elements, which are 8 in number, and which gradually evolve from finer to gross. A part of ego in the sky, a part of which is air, a part of which is fire, a part of which is water, a part of which is earth. Thus one universe inflates to an area of 4 billion miles in diameter. A yogi who desires gradual liberation must penetrate all the different coverings of the universe, including the subtle coverings of the 3 qualitative modes of material nature. One who does this never has to return to this mortal world. According to Sukadeva Goswami, the above description of the material and spiritual skies is neither imaginary nor utopian. The actual facts are recorded in the Vedic hymns, and Lord Vasudeva disclosed them to Lord Brahma when Brahma satisfied him. One can achieve the perfection of life only when he has a definite idea of Vaikuntha and the Supreme Godhead. One should always think about and describe the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for this is recommended in both the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavad Purana, which are 2 authorized commentaries upon the Vedas. Lord Chaitanya has made all these subject matters easier for the fallen people of this age to accept, and Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita has therefore presented them for the easy understanding of all concerned. Mathura Dara Loka, Mathura Dwara Loka Nija Rupa Prakashya, Nana Rupe Bilasaye Chatur Byuha Hoina. Lord Krishna manifests his own form in Mathura and Dwarka. He enjoys pastimes in various ways by expanding into the quadruple forms. Vasudeva Sankarshana Pradyumnani Ruda Sarva Chatur Byuha Amshi Turiya Vishuddha. Vasudeva Sankarshan Pradyumna and Aniruddha are the primary quadruple forms from whom all other quadruple forms are manifested. They are all purely transcendental. Etina Loke Krishna Kevala Lilamoy Nija Ganaloya Kele Ananta Samoy. Only in these 3 places, Dwarka, Mathura, and Gokula, does the all-sporting Lord Krishna perform his endless pastimes with his personal associates. Parabhyoma Madhye Kore Swarupa Prakash Narayana Rupe Koren Vibhida Bilas. In the Vaikuntha planets of the spiritual sky, the Lord manifests his identity as Narayan and performs pastimes in various ways. Swarupa Vigraha Krishnara Kevala Dvibuj Narayana Rupe Se Tanu Chaturbuj Shankha Chakra Gara Padma Mahaishvaryamoy Shri Bhu Nila Shakti Jara Charana Sevoy. Krishna's own form has only 2 hands, but in the form of Lord Narayan he has 4 hands. Lord Narayan holds a conch shell, disc, club, and lotus flower, and he is full of great opulence. The Shri, Bhu, and Nila energies serve at his lotus feet. In the Ramanujan Madhva sect of Vaishnavism, there are extensive descriptions of the Shri, Bhu, and Nila energies. In Bengal, the Nila energy is sometimes called the Lila energy. These 3 energies are employed in the service of 4-handed Narayan in Vaikuntha, relating how 3 of the Alvars, namely Bhuta Yogi, Sada Yogi, and Branta Yogi saw Narayan in person when they took shelter at the house of a Brahmin in the village of Gehali. The Prapananamrita of the Sri Sampradaya describes Narayan as follows. Tarkshadirudam tadit ambudabam Lakshmi dharam vakshasi pankajaksham hastadvaye shobita shankachakram Vishnum dadrishur bhagavantam adyam ajanubahum kamaniya gatram parshvadvaye shobita bhuminilam pitambaram bhushana bhushitangam chaturbhujam chandana rushitangam. They saw the lotus-eyed Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, mounted on Garuda and holding Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, to his chest. He resembled a bluish rain cloud with flashing lightning, and in two of his four hands he held a conch shell and disc. His arms stretched down to his knees, and all his beautiful limbs were smeared with sandalwood and decorated with glittering ornaments. He wore yellow clothes, and by either side stood his energies, Bhumi and Nila. There is the following reference to the Shri, Bhu, and Nila energies in the Shita-upanishad. Maha-Lakshmir Deveshasya Bina Bina Rupa Chaitana Chaitanatmika Sadevi Trivida Bhavati Shakti Atmana Icha Shakti Kriya Shakti Sakshat Shakti Riti Icha Shakti Trivida Bhavati Shri Bhumi Nilatmika. Mahalakshmi, the supreme energy of the Lord, is experienced in different ways. She is divided into material and spiritual potencies, and in both features she acts as the willing energy, creative energy, and the internal energy. The willing energy is again divided into three, namely Shri, Bhu, and Nila. Quoting from the revealed scriptures in his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, Madhvacharya has stated that mother material nature, which is conceived of as the illusory energy Durga, has three divisions, namely Shri, Bhu, and Nila. She is the illusory energy for those who are weak in spiritual strength, because such energies are created energies of Lord Vishnu. Although each energy has no direct relationship with the unlimited, they are subordinate to the Lord, because the Lord is the master of all energies. In his Bhagavad Sandarbha, Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhu quotes, the Padma Purana refers to the eternally auspicious abode of Godhead, which is full in all opulences, including the energies Shri, Bhu, and Nila. Maha-Samhita, which discusses the transcendental name and form of Godhead, also mentions Durga as the potency of the supersoul in relationship with the living entities. The internal potency acts in relation with his personal affairs, and the material potency manifests three modes. Quoting elsewhere from the revealed scriptures, he states that Shri is the energy of Godhead that maintains the cosmic manifestation. Bhu is the energy that creates the cosmic manifestation, and Nila, Durga, is the energy that destroys the creation. All these energies act in relation with the living beings, and thus they act together and thus they are together called Jiva Maya. All these energies act in relation with the living beings, and thus they are together called Jiva Maya. Yadyapi kevala tara krida matra dharma tatapi jivere kripai kore ek karma. Although his pastimes are his only characteristic functions, by his causeless mercy he performs one activity for the fallen souls. Salokya samipya sharsti sarup Sarupya Prakar, Charimukti Diyakore Jivaranishtar. He delivers the fallen living entities by offering them the four kinds of liberation: Salokya, Samipya, Sharshti, and Sarupya. There are two kinds of liberated souls: those who are liberated by the favor of the Lord and those who are liberated by their own effort. One who gets liberation by his own effort is called an impersonalist, and he emerges into the glaring effulgence of the Lord, the Brahma-Jyoti. But devotees of the Lord who qualify themselves for liberation by devotional service are offered four kinds of liberation, namely Salokya, status equal to that of the Lord; Samipya, constant association with the Lord; Sharshti, opulence equal to that of the Lord; and Sarupya, features like those of the Lord. Brahma-Sayuja Muktera Taha Nahigati Vaikuntha Bahire Hoy Ta Sabarastiti. Those who attain Brahma-Sayuja liberation cannot gain entrance into Vaikuntha. Their residence is outside the Vaikuntha planets. Vaikuntha Bahire Ek Jyotirmoy Mandal Krishnera Angera Prabha Parama Ujwal. Outside the Vaikuntha planets is the atmosphere of the glowing effulgence, which consists of the supremely bright rays of the body of Lord Krishna. Siddhaloka Nama Tara Prakatirapar Chit Swarupa Tahanahi Chit Shakti Bikar. That region is called Siddhaloka, and it is beyond the material nature. Its nature is spiritual, but it does not have spiritual varieties. Surya Mandala Jena Bahire Nirishesh Bitare Suryera Rata Adi Savisesh. It is like the homogeneous effulgence around the sun, but inside the sun are the chariots, horses, and other opulences of the sun god. Outside of Vaikuntha, the abode of Krishna, which is called Paravyoma, is the glaring effulgence of Krishna's bodily rays. That is called the Brahma-Jyoti. The transcendental region of that effulgence is called Siddhaloka or Brahmaloka. When impersonalists achieve liberation, they merge into the Brahmaloka effulgence. This transcendental region is undoubtedly spiritual, but it contains no manifestations of the spiritual activities or variegatedness. It is compared to the glow of the sun. Within the sun's glow is the sphere of the sun, where one can experience all sorts of varieties. So I'm going to stop here and continue at the next reading. Hariharaya Nama Krishna Jadavaya Nama Hariharaya Nama Krishna Jadavaya Nama Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinatha Marana Mohan Giridhari Gopinatha Marana Mohan Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Gadadhara Shiva Sari Bhakta Vrinda Jai Rupa Sanata Bhakta Raghunath Jai Rupa Sanata Bhakta Raghunath Sri Jiva Gopala Bhakta Dasa Raghunath Sri Jiva Gopala Bhattadasa Raghunath, H.I. Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan, H.I. Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan, Jaite Vignana Shabishta Puran, Jaite Vignana Shabishta Puran, H.I. Gosai Jarmui Taradas, H.I. Gosai Jarmui Taradas, Tasabara Padabrinu Mora Panchagras, Tasabara Padarinu Tader Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanibas, Ader Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanibas, Janame Janame More Abhilas, Janame Janame More Abhilas, H.I. Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas, H.I. Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas, Radha Krishna Nitya-lila Korila Prakash, Radha Krishna Nitya-lila Korila Prakash, Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan, Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan, Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Manjai Aman, Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Manjai Aman, Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriya, Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriya, Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Narada Moda, Sankirtana Kohe Narada Moda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Nitai Gora Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gora Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gora Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gora Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo. Jai Saparikara Shishi Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari Ju Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajaka Ashtatara Sadashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Nirmalacharya Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajaka Ashtatara Sadashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajaka Ashtatara Sadashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Rakak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishoredas Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Raghunath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai, Rupanuga Guru Varga ki jai, Namachari Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai, Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath, Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Dasha Raghunath, Shad Goswami Prabhu ki jai, Premsigo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Harshivasadi, Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu ki jai, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai. Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur ki jai, Sri Chaitanya Bhagwat ki jai, Narottam Srinivas Shyamananda Prabhu ki jai, Vishvavarenya Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Bhakti Kusham Ashram Maharaj ki jai, Srila Bhakti Tilak Niriha Maharaj ki jai, Anandakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Shri Navadip Dham ki jai, Shri Mayapur ki jai, Saparshada Sri Nityananda Prabhu ki jai, Saparshada Shriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Sri Kuladvip ki jai, Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat ki jai, Sokel Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Sevashram ki jai, Ganga Devi ki jai, Tulasi Maharani ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Sri Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopi Govardhan, Sham Kuna Radhakunda Kalindi Yamuna Ju ki jai, Sri Purushottam Dham ki jai, Baladev Subhadra Jagannath Ju ki jai, Bhakti Vigna Vinashaya Sri Nrsingadev ki jai, Bhakta Prabhara Sri Prahlad Maharaj ki jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Sri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, all the assembled devotees ki jai, Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.
Jai Bhavan Janata Maharaj ki jai.